Oh, thank you so much.
Okay.
Let's see here. Where's the thing?
Joe, did you get the email from Councilmember Ross earlier?
Yes, I was planning to read it in once we get there.
No problem. Just wanted to make sure you saw it.
Yep. Okay, and let's see. It is 7:30. I'll give us just a minute or so before we get started.
Yep. Let's see. I'm going to turn off my screen share for a minute.
Hey Jason, while you have your screen share off, would you mind if I try mine and verify that everything is fine?
Go right ahead.
Okay. Does this look like a staff report to everyone?
Way to go. I can see something. It's working this time.
Okay.
That's helpful.
See, Councilmember Christensen snuck in on me. He must still have a panelist link.
Well, technically it's, panelist, yeah. Well, I guess we do promote council anyway, right?
Well, yeah, but our former practice was that commissioners and staff who regularly attended got a direct panelist link to join the meeting without me having to promote them.
Oh,
we stopped doing that because it's a lot of work for the IT staff, and it's easy enough to promote people from attendee.
Okay.
But since Councilmember Christensen probably still has her old link, and her city email address hasn't changed, so it would still work.
I was not trying any funny business, I promise. I just went off of whatever Gwen's email was.
Oh, perfect.
But I do apologize for sneaking up. Folks.
You don't. No apology needed. The mayor does the same thing. He sneaks right in on me.
One quick IT question before we get started here, and that is under the attendees, is owner just like an account where someone used a weird name, or is that someone from city staff?
It's an account where somebody used a weird name.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify.
One of the problems with Zoom is that if you come into a webinar as an attendee, you can't change your name.
Right.
You're stuck with whatever you're set up with. So you have to leave the meeting and then manually rejoin and to change your name to fix that. It's convoluted.
I just want to make sure that I understood what that was.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Then I will go ahead and call us to order because I believe we do have a quorum.
All right.
And let's see, close that. Hang on 1 second here. Uh-oh, I just lost the agenda.
Oh.
Okay, I will hunt for that in a second. Okay, let's see. Actually, I need it for the names. Okay, sorry, folks. 1 second. Because we have some new members who've joined us. Let's see.
I have it pulled up here if you just wanted to take a glance at it. Oh, I think I have it pulled up.
Okay, yeah, we can go off of that to at least get started. I'll find it in just a minute. All right. So I'll call us to order here at 7:34. And if you could scroll up so I can see the names real quick. Thank you.
Back to the top there, all the way up.
Yep. Thank you. Commissioner Mathur, not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I do not see. Okay. Commissioner Smith.
Here.
And Commissioner Johnson is here. Commissioner Lambert, I do not see. Okay. Commissioner Maruziak.
Here.
Commissioner Aleph.
Aleph here.
Aleph, thank you. And Commissioner Goodman.
Here.
Okay, great. So we will come back to approving anyone who may or may not be here in just a little bit. So we give folks just another few minutes here to join us. The next thing would be the approval of the agenda. So can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Maruziak, and a second.
Second.
I think I heard Commissioner Goodman first, just for the purpose of the minutes. Okay, and any discussion of the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then we have approved the agenda. And we'll go ahead and welcome our new members, of which at least one of us is joining us tonight. So Mr. or Ms., or I don't know your preferred pronouns, Aleph, am I saying that right? Aleph?
Aleph.
Aleph, thank you. You'll have to remind me again. Aleph, all right.
No worries.
So thank you for joining us. Do you want to just take a second or so to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Chris. I've lived in Snoqualmie since 2008. I grew up here in Western Washington, and I'm just excited to pitch in and help out in my community. So thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Okay. I think that I finally found the agenda so I can follow it a little bit easier than trying to follow it on the screen. And there it is. Okay. So next we will, did staff have anything else they want to say about our new members?
Nothing particular. Mr. Aleph is here tonight. There's another new appointee, which you heard during the roll call, Commissioner Mathur, who's not in attendance tonight. And then there will be a third new member who will take their seat January 1st when the current chair, Commissioner Johnson, goes off the Planning Commission to join the City Council. Andre Testman will join the Planning Commission at that time.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to citizen comments and requests for items that are not on the agenda. And I do see that we do have a number of attendees. So if you would like to speak to something that is not on the current agenda, which you can find on the city's website, now would be the time to raise your hand and let us know your thoughts on other things. As things come up on the agenda, then citizens will have a chance to make a comment on those items as they come up. So go ahead and raise your hand if you wish to speak. And if not, that's okay too. Okay, not seeing any hands. So in that case, we will go ahead and move into the council liaison report, which most of us probably heard as we were coming in. Councilmember Ross is not joining us tonight, but I did get an email from her. So I was going to go ahead and just read through this for everyone and also make sure that Lynn gets a copy for the minutes. All right. We hired Michael Sauerwein. Sauerwein, thank you, to be our city administrator. He brings more than 25 years of local government leadership experience and currently serves as the city manager for Medina, Washington, a position he has held since 2014. He previously served as assistant city manager and director of administrative services for Sammamish, total of 9 years, and prior to that was the city manager for Sheridan, Oregon for 10 years. It's a lot of experience. Mr. Sauerwein has a master's degree in public affairs from the University of Oregon and a bachelor's degree in political science, also from the University of Oregon. Michael will start in Snoqualmie on January 10th. The city of Snoqualmie is accepting applications from Snoqualmie residents to fill the upcoming vacancy for position 2. That would be Councilmember Ross's seat. Applications are due by December 23rd, 2021. They also approved, the council that is, approved an increase in property taxes effective January 1st, 2022. The change in property tax for 2022 will equate to about $7.50 annually for assessed values of homes of a home at $500,000 and approximately $15 annually for assessed values of homes at $1 million. They also approved the reappointment of Commissioner Lambert to the Planning Commission with the term expiring in December 2025. And she gives a special thanks to Commissioner Lambert for his continued commitment to serve on the commission. All right, so that is the update. Okay.
If there's any questions about the council liaison report, I can probably answer most of them.
Sure.
If there are any.
Yeah, I didn't have anything, but yeah, if other commissioners had any questions, please, now's the time. Okay, hearing none, then we will move on to the next item, which is the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the November 1st meeting?
Moment, please.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a change to the minutes. I was listed as Angle and Volkers on the minutes, and I'd like to be changed to Citizen, please.
Great.
We'll note that change.
Thank you.
Okay, any other changes?
I'll move to approve the minutes as amended.
All right, I will second that. Thank you, Commissioner Smith, for the motion. Any other discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, then we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, then we will consider the minutes to be approved as amended. That's really interesting how it keeps doing that. All right, so that takes us to the first item of discussion for us, which is going to be, I'm assuming the name of the project is The Rails. And before we get into the staff report, or not report, but just for staff to tell us what that's all about and what we're expected to do with it tonight, I would like to open it up to citizens to make any comments they would like about this item. So this would be a new development in the historic downtown area.
Hold on one sec. I just realized I never hit the button to resume recording. So we missed the first 10 minutes. That's okay.
Recording in progress.
My apologies. That's okay. We've got notes for it, so.
Okay, well, officially we're required to have minutes recorded showing what we've done. So we've got the recording now. All right, so yeah, I don't see any other hands going up. So with that, I will turn things over to staff to tell us what this project is and what their expectations are for us.
Before we start, Dylan, should I get the applicants people in here?
Yeah, I think so. If you don't mind pulling
Yep,
Torian
sorry.
and Tracy.
Yep, will do.
I'm not sure if Les is part of this or not. But once they're over here, I'm sure they can let us know.
Also,
I think he's with the architect. I believe he's with the architect, if I recall my emails correctly.
Okay.
I'll get him in too.
Since this is a fairly sizable development, I just think it's worth noting this is a quasi-judicial thing, right? So we can't talk to folks outside of the meeting about this, correct?
Correct. Correct. This is a permit approval, so.
Right.
Okay, so I see we have people pulled in. So I'll just do some quick introductions. Tracy Hovinga is the owner of the lot and the developer of the property. Torian is the architect for this project, and so they're who the city has had, a huge majority, if not all, the interactions with. This is a development proposal for a parcel, and let me screen share because it's always easier for everyone. Okay, promise me you guys can see this? Is that?
Yes.
All right, okay. So City Hall is here on River. And if you're on Maple, you would know that if you're driving down Maple, you probably registered that there is a lot currently opposite side from City Hall and opposite side from the park here that's, I believe, called Sister Cities Park. And this is the parcel in question. It's been vacant since the 1990s, at least, and likely vacant as far as records in King County go. And so there is no historical building that has been present in this location. No contributing building, no landmark district requirements there. So just a vacant lot. And I will pull you over to their designs now as I talk about kind of the ideas of the staff report and what they mean for this development. So this will be
Quick question.
Yes.
Quick question. Did you say that this lot has always been vacant as far as any historical records go, or is it just like in the post-war period?
As far as I can tell, I did some sleuthing, and outside of pulling up some sort of historical photo and looking down the roadway or something like that to try to spot an old shed or barn, I couldn't find anything.
Okay, thank you.
But there's nothing in King County records for any sort of bill of sale or purchase from anyone. Somebody else's record of that, please let me know, but that's where we'll start. And so that kind of gets into where we're going to go with this. This is the first meeting. This is a bigger project in the historic district, development of a new site. So this will be at least the first meeting, and we'll take action by the second meeting or after. So this meeting is just to discuss a lot of the bare bones. It's a large project, so we're going to have to work through some details, and there's a lot to discuss here. But as you see this design, there is going to be a change that is required. And so these designs, as you see them, cannot be approved. And I'll just mention what the problem is right now, and that's that there's a divider wall on this roof here. This is above height code. There's going to be some changes there. So these exact designs will be slightly modified. So when we come back, you'll be able to make action on the permits then. So that's why when you saw the staff report, it says not for approval, because this exact images and application are not. But we'll work with the architect and the owner to update everything, and then also whatever feedback comes from this meeting will be included for January's meeting. So just to kind of step us back into the idea, per city's rules on floodway development, this building wasn't allowed to have first floor residential. That's part of state code that the city code is also follows up on. And so this building has a office retail section in the front. You can definitely see the cutaways here, but I'll try to pull between the different imagery here to try to help illustrate the talking points here. But it's a 3-story building. First floor will be office retail and parking with some additional things like elevator space, mechanical rooms, some bicycle parking, trash receptacle area. I'll try to zoom down. I believe there's an image in here that shows this well. Here's a cutaway on the side. So the front of the building is on the left, and you can see that it's open air to the parking area, and then the 2 floors above it are going to be apartments. With the 2 silo features on both sides are the stairwells to access the rooftop. So, sorry, did I hear a question?
No, I'm sorry. I should mute myself.
Oh, no worries. I just want to make sure. So there's a lot of features going on here to try to connect to the historic nature of the city, and since this is in the historic district, but one of the issues that you'll see is that our code is oftentimes in reference to maintaining or preserving the historic nature of the buildings that are being modified. This is one of the more rarer instances where there is no current development, and that we're not trying to retain any building from the 40s or earlier. Instead, it's trying to hearken to the historic nature and the historic design standards. So you'll see things like material types still being relevant, and you'll see that they, in conversation with us, and we inform them of the codes that implement this, try to indicate that in their design with the grain silo features. There's also going to be rules for dividing up of the building so that you don't have one large flat base surface. So in talks with the architect, we've worked through kind of various versions of this to try to bring it up to the code. And that you would see is reflected here in dividing the building's kind of facade work into three distinct levels and in depth. So let's see.
Real quick, I'm not seeing a lot of variation in depth. That looks to me like a pretty flat wall on that side that we're looking at there.
Okay, so I'll stop moving so that way we would reference the same one. Are you referring to this one right here next to the silo?
I guess there's a little depth there, but I was more looking at the other side where those sort of greenish doors were.
Yeah, so one of the issues that you're going to see with these renderings is that they want to flatten all the features out. So I might have to scroll back up to one of those more 3D rendered versions. But yeah, the base is flat, but it has the standard, awnings. And then this lot also features a right-of-way deviation. So we have to pull you back up to kind of show.
Okay, I'd like to recognize Commissioner Goodman.
Yeah, and I'll keep looking.
Thanks. I'm curious about the zoning designation of this parcel, and if what's being proposed here is as of right, or if it required any sort of special permit.
No. So yeah, that was one of the first discussions was how to achieve proper zoning. I believe, Jason, make sure I'm not being silly here and saying the wrong thing, but this is BG or BR2. BR2, I believe.
I believe it's BR2 here.
Okay, that's what I thought. So in BR2, that's why I was mentioning the designation for residential on the first floor. You would not be allowed to have residential on the first floor, but you are allowed to have retail space on the first floor on a BR2. You're allowed to have second and third floor residential. That is not conditional, that's just completely permitted. So there is no under conditional approval requirement for either of the two land uses within the zoning codes. Jason, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's not relevant to the design necessarily, but on that street is mostly single family homes. But in terms of the actual zoning, it feasibly could be all of those parcels could feasibly be mixed use like that.
Yeah, you are actually nailing one of the kind of things that happens when zoning code changes, and that's that it feels out of place for a while. But you will, if I come back over to the King County parcel viewer, this is 2019, so we're a little outdated, but on this intersection here, it's the same zoning. So there's a dental office, there's a some sort of medical facility, and essentially all these structures are in the same zoning. It's just in conversion, so to speak, away from single family homes and into more business retail.
What you're seeing is all those parcels on the east side of Maple are zone BR2. They're all within the historic district and not in the landmark district specifically. And so those are all zone BR2. Now, on the west side of Maple, you have City Hall and then some existing single family homes. City Hall is zone BR2. The single family homes are actually zoned open space. The long-term vision for there is to have a city park. But then admittedly, if you go south past River Street on Maple, both sides of Maple are zoned constrained residential. And then if you go north past King Street, the very first lot there where the where the bar is also zoned BR2, and then you get into single-family residential zone properties. So it is a bit, as Dylan says, as redevelopment occurs, it will certainly be a little bit weird, but that's how the zoning is set up. And yes, you're right, it is, of course, predominantly single-family residential.
So this whole length of street here could be essentially upzoned.
Well, it's already.
Well, I shouldn't say upzoned. I mean, it could be built as though it had been upzoned.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, just like you already see with a couple of the buildings on the street. Like, for instance, the Woodman's the Woodman's an exception, it's a historic building, but the height of that building is also on Maple. And then you also see some of these down here that are designed with more, retail business focus. It's creeping in, so to speak, towards the center, but that was just the natural path of development. So yeah. So I'll go back.
That was going to be my next question, if I may. What is the total height of the building, including the silos on the edges, which appear to be the highest points?
Let me see if I can quickly find the height details. I didn't necessarily want to pull up every single document, but I'm going to pause you on this very pretty one, and I'm going to go find it. And then, but I'm pretty sure for our city code, the max height of a building is 35 feet, but there is exceptions for that for necessary features that go above 35 feet, custom rooftop protuberances, this building's, you say the floor deck of the roof is, I believe, at 32 feet. And I believe the elevator silos extend another 11, which is within the 15 feet over the 35 feet rooftop allowance. But Jason, you can get into that if you want to go further. I can pull up that design and stop talking.
So the first two floors are 10-foot height. The upper floor, the third floor, is a 12-foot height. So as Dylan said, it's 32 feet to the bottom of the rooftop, if you will. And then the highest point from the silo-looking stair tower is an additional 11.5 feet. So you're looking at 43.5 to that. As far as there's certainly the exception you may recall from the discussion a few years ago about downtown height generally. Customary.
Yes, that was coming to mind.
Lively discussion.
And so the point is, customary rooftop appurtenances include things like rooftop access stairways, mechanical equipment, HVAC, parapet walls to screen those things. Elevator shaft extensions, these fall within that. There certainly are limits on the appurtenances. You can't just have a roof full of appurtenances because that would defeat the purpose of the height limit. And that's one of the reasons why, as Dylan mentioned at the beginning, the separator wall is going to have to go because it doesn't fall into the category of a customary rooftop appurtenance. It's a wall. It's not a parapet wall or anything like that. So.
And this is rather small, so I'm going to try zooming in for you all. This is from the front. So whenever you see green, just connect that to the front because that's got the most green. And it's got the obvious entryway to the public kind of doors.
So you can see with the design features they're doing with the silo approach, they're essentially attempting to add a design feature. They're masking the stair tower there such that it looks like a feature of the building. It is not just a boxy stair tower like you could otherwise see.
I almost think it'd be better if we just had one silo on one side. There's something, I can't put my finger on it, there's something that's bugged me about the symmetry. I don't know. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Goodman.
Thanks. And is it okay that I'm using the raise hand feature, by the way? I think I've had that on there before. I'm a big fan.
I think technically that's how we should be doing it anyway.
Okay. I was just going to clarify, were we going to have a presentation by the property owner or developer, or are we supposed to be having just initial reactions? Or
So I didn't put them on the hook for a presentation, but they are here and they're very familiar with their project, obviously. I think this would be a good opportunity for a dialogue or conversation about the project. So as you see fit, feel free. I'm sure they're happy to address any questions about the design.
Well, I mean, I guess just to start, I'd be interested just to have them describe it for us and how they feel it fits into this particular neighborhood, if that's all right.
Tracy or Torian, would you?
Defer to Torian.
Okay. So you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay. First off,
there we are.
to address the wall up on the roof, the owner's initial request was to have a part of the rooftop deck available for tenants and part of the rooftop deck available for her private use. And she's going to be occupying one of the units in this building. And so then we did have that discussion with Dylan about that not being one of the appurtenances that was allowed. So we've discussed that with the owner, and she is amenable to deleting that wall. The other thing about the stairwells is we have to have one at each end. It's going to be a code requirement in order to properly exit this thing. So, this was the owner's request, and I think it's a good suggestion that she had to do this silo motif on this. And so that's why we have one at each end, is to meet the requirement for exit separation and quantity of exits, because it could be rather high occupant load up on that deck according to the building code. So we have to have both of them. And we have to have 2 set exits from each floor as well. As far as the materials goes, it's a little hard to see on these things, but we've got, the owner had requested or sent us a number of projects that had lighter colored or whitish brick. And so you'll see on here that flag note number 2 is areas of brick. And the areas of, I guess it's in between the brick and that center one is a board and batten motif. It doesn't show up very good on this small thing here. And then the center section is lap siding, and they're separated by vertical trim pieces. And I think that we had, I'm trying to remember the exact wording in the historic code, but we were required, in order to meet that, to have some sort of separations between these various materials. And so that is why the upper 2 floors are configured the way they are. And then down on the bottom floor, you'll see that we have that separated from the upper 2 floors by that horizontal band labeled as number 3 there. And we have awnings that are similar to the ones on, I don't remember what that railroad is.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of metal awnings with braces back to the building that are on the sidewalks on that street as well. And you'll see that we have varying parapet shapes. That was another requirement that's in the historic downtown review zone. So this color scheme, you've got to be a little flexible in how this looks on the screen here, but Dylan did give us an approved, I guess, series of options for color combinations. And so I think I identified that in the one of our responses, Dylan, on which one that was going to conform to, but these colors will conform to one of those approved color schemes.
Yeah, the green has grown on me the more I've been looking at it. I do see, is it Les Seifberg? I see your hands. Les, okay. I assume that you're with the development team.
Yes, I'm Torian's partner in the office.
Okay, well, I'll let you two tag team as you see fit.
So, okay, I guess one request is to maybe share my screen. I've got the rendering up. The model is up on full time, so I can kind of move it around as Torian speaks.
Great. If we can do that, staff.
Jason, do we have to give him special permission, or does he already have
Nope. Nope, you can go ahead and do it.
it? Okay, there you go.
Can you see the model?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So Torian, go ahead and feel free to talk, and I'll just kind of move it around. But
Yeah, and one of the things you'll notice too is that we've got there's going to be 11 units here, and then plus about 1,000 or a little bit more than 1,000 feet or so of retail or mixed use space on the ground floor. And as we move around to the rear, we will have at least partially covered parking for 11 spaces there. And I don't remember what the total parking requirement is, but we meet that with the angled spots on the street. I should mention that there is a 10 or 12 foot dedication as well on this property. So that was something that we had discussed with the staff early on about how to get the required number of parking stalls on, and it was determined by the staff that we could do this angled parking, which is encompasses the street dedication or the right-of-way dedication.
Yeah, if you could go just down to street level from this view. So just kind of angle it down a little bit. Okay, so this helps me a lot with the concern that I had about those two fake tower things. Was from this angle, I can clearly see that from the perspective that you're at when you're actually on the street, they'll actually be kind of obscured in a way. It's more like you would see it if you were driving past it or something like that from one side. It was kind of looking like, the only thing that kept coming to mind, I don't know why, it was like Mickey Mouse ears sticking out of it, but
yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to mention also, is that
it's about perspective.
In a pure two-dimensional view, where you would have the, let me see, I changed my camera to a parallel projection. You kind of see them both, but in real world, you will never see that.
Yeah, oh, that completely eliminates that concern that I had. Okay, I'm sorry, you go and keep going.
Oh yeah, so so basically, I think it's a real nice feature that Tracy wants to have the rooftop access for the tenants and for her use. And I don't believe there's another building in the city that has that right now. I may be wrong about that, but I think it's going to be a real nice and positive feature for this building and for her. And you'll see that we have planter boxes as well around the outside, on the inside of the parapet. And then there is I guess you could call it a safety wall or something just inside of that separates the public area from the parapet. So we've got the guardrail is set 4 feet or 5 feet or so inside of the parapets. So that, if you go back to that street view, Les, you'll see that you don't see those really either from eye level on the street. Well, I guess you can see it a little bit depending on what parapet. Well, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, if you're across the
So
street.
yeah, so we wanted to set those back so that you didn't just see a guardrail up there tacked onto the back of the parapet. Tracy, do you have any comments about what you're desiring here? Oh, this you can see the board and batten pattern a little bit better on this view here when you get get closer.
Yeah, no, I think you've done a good job. As far as the rooftop, it's still kind of to be determined. We need to remove the wall because of code, but we also need to discuss whether the elevator will go all the way up there. That I actually kind of just thought of while we're on this call right now. The other thing is, I don't know who I'm going to be leasing out the retail space to. And so some of my forethought of that is, whether I'll be leasing it out to somebody that also wants to utilize part of the rooftop. I think that would be a really neat place to have a place within the valley that people can go to on a rooftop during the nice months. So that was just something else. I just haven't determined at this point whether, part of the rooftop will be for my personal use, but then whether the other part of the rooftop will be for residents or whether it will kind of go hand in hand with that leased space down below.
One thing that I can mention here is that if you see those four sort of pillar things, those are meant to represent rooftop heaters, and right behind two of them, sort of about 2/3 of the way over, we don't show in this rendering the elevator overrun. If the elevator was to extend all the way to the roof, there would be an additional box up on top there, about 2/3 of the way over, about right where that is happening. So there's an option, and Tracy and I haven't really discussed that about whether she wants to have the elevator go up to the roof or just stop at the third apartment.
Yeah, I think if it becomes half of the rooftop is for residents, I don't think it's necessary, but I think if it's going to be a combination with a business that's operating down on the first floor, I think it should go all the way up. So yeah,
just so you know, there'll be another box basically up there to provide for that elevator overrun, and that would be out in the middle of the building too. So it's another thing that you wouldn't see from the street.
Staff would know this stuff, of course, but is there a requirement if it's going to be used by the public or just in general to if it's going to be fit for human use on the roof? Does it have to have an elevator for ADA reasons or anything like that?
That's a good question. I was just thinking about that when we were talking about it, maybe not going up there. That's something that I have to research.
Staff would make sure that it happens either way.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it happens, that it has to happen either way. It very well might have to happen.
Right, that's what I mean, yeah. I mean, if that's what the law is, then that's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'd have to look into it. My guess would be that if somehow the business was using the space for seating of like a restaurant or something, which I'm not saying that's allowed, but then it would have to have handicap accessible access.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. If we make it available to the public, it probably will have to have access.
Commissioner Goodman. Oh, was that an accidental hand?
No, sorry, it was.
Okay, there you go.
A question for staff on that note is what sort of, how do I put it? I don't know. What kind of businesses are kind of permitted to go into that space? Or to put another way, are there any sort of businesses that are not supposed to go in there? Or is there sort of a vision for what kind of thing?
More that are not allowed to go in there, I can tell you that. I'm going to pull up the table of uses. It's quite extensive, but you would definitely see things like you can't have a mechanic shop there, or you can't have a steel yard. There's some kind of funny ones like that I don't think is what you're referencing right now.
Cow farm.
A cow farm, yeah, exactly. So do you mind if I pop over and grab the screen share, Wes?
Sure.
I guess I don't necessarily need to get so detailed, but is it just sort of regular retail kind of stuff, restaurant or boutique or that type of thing?
Generally, yeah. Here, I'll pull it up for you. So BR2 kind of is in the middle of this column here. So you could have tattoo parlors, shoe repairs, art galleries, dry cleaners, your general kind of things, but with exceptions like no formula takeout food restaurants or espresso snack stands, no call centers, no data centers. I mean, you could go through this list, but the general take is that most retail uses are permitted. And then there's, anytime you see the C for conditional, that's usually where the intent was getting a little iffy, whether it included them. So in this case, hotels and motels, it was a bit iffy whether it included them. And we actually had quite a bit of conversation about the options for uses for that retail use when they were developing this project. So we kind of steered them clear of any of the major pitfall concepts. Like if, for instance, they thought they wanted a hotel, it was going to be conditional and it was going to require other use, land use allowances. And so in that conversation, they've arrived at this land use and development strategy to avoid some of those potential issues.
Yeah, we're not looking to request, at least this point, any uses or occupancies that might require a conditional use. We just want to put things in there that are allowed outright by the zoning.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could just mention, I could foresee, maybe another winery, something where people come to Snoqualmie for an evening out and they can basically walk around, where the Snoqualmie Brewery is and Main Road, and then back into this new area and maybe do like a wine walk. I would love to get somebody in there possibly with something like that, just because I think it fits what's going on out in there historic. But haven't had much more thought beyond that.
Is that brewery where they have is that a Pizza Hut? Not a Pizza Hut, but a pizza store?
The Arrow Pizza?
Yeah, I think we worked on that 10 years ago.
Another thing that comes to mind, and I don't think that this is a requirement that is anywhere in code, but it's something that's come up with buildings that seem to just have a large volume to them, where it's worked well in some cities to have the upper two or more floors just set back a little bit and having the bottom floor kind of stick out a little bit as kind of like a street side. And the purpose is that it just makes it look to the eye like it's taking up less volume, even though it's not taking up that much less or that much more really. So anyway.
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
The zoning code does not require any side yard setbacks. And we have provided between 5 and 10 feet, 5 feet at the stairwells and 10 feet elsewhere. So we're not building this thing out to as much volume as we could. And part of it was to address that option, but also it's part of the building code is that we want to be able to have bedrooms with some windows and some egress. And that would not allow us to have the building built out to the side yards either.
Yeah, and that actually is another good point, that this building, it looks like, has a parking lot between the street and the building. So I think that becomes more of an issue when the building fronts directly onto the sidewalk, with it taking up a lot of space. So I think just the fact that it's set back across the parking lot will help with that issue.
Yeah, we try to accommodate that design feature by adding the setback of the patio up above as well. So it kind of gives it that feel.
Yeah, I had mentioned that we didn't want to we had set that back and put that sort of planter area up on the roof, and didn't want to have a railing just tacked onto the inside of the parapet. So we moved that back I think it's 4 or 5 feet from the parapet edge.
As well as a safety feature for the patrons upstairs.
Somebody manages to fall over the guardrail, at least they're going to fall into a planter instead of onto the street, I guess.
More important now that it's vineyard optional.
One more general thought that comes to mind while I was looking at these designs over the last couple of days was I was a little bit concerned about if you're on the other side of the building on Railroad looking across, what does this building look like and how does that potentially affect the character of downtown? And, I understand, of course, that this is a process where we go by what the code says, but just want to bring up that concern.
I'll try to pull up a Google map of this real quick.
Yeah. That'd be helpful.
Of the
So
most
really take a
recent
peek at it.
Google Maps data. There's a lot of those, the heritage trees that you're all probably familiar with, the ones that are currently lit up just on the trunks, and then, sometimes there's trains that are in between. So I'm hoping that
Sure.
that there isn't a train sitting there right now for this Google Map imagery, but. And I'm pulling it up separate, you can't see what I'm doing yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm sharing my screen. Can you all see the?
Yeah.
Okay, so this will be a bit tricky because it's an empty lot and we're looking kind of far on a Google map here, but I believe this patch of plants here, that is where the building will go. So just behind this medical services, I believe that's exactly where that train stands right now. Maybe not exactly, I should take that back, but behind this, medic train car, I believe it's behind this.
Okay. And does that lot go all the way to that sort of wooden fence, do you think? To the left there?
Let me pull
I know
up.
it's kind of hard to tell.
I can answer that. It does, because I've been mowing that lawn for a couple of years. And I mow up to that wooden fence.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Jason.
So,
Okay, so we would clearly see this building, is what I'm saying.
yeah, also obviously shielded by the landscaping, and if I could just share my screen real quick.
Absolutely.
Okay, so besides the landscaping and the trees that you saw that would have the lights on the trunks, we also have proposed landscaping as well to kind of help shield any cars. And then so realistically, you'll see 2 floors above, and then we also feature some landscaping on the roof as well. So it integrates, I think, well with the park and the landscaping, and realistically, it's just 2 levels that you're gonna focus.
Yeah, and Dylan, I think I don't remember exactly off the top of my head what the landscape type has to be according to the Snoqualmie zoning code, but it's screening landscaping is the requirement there. I don't remember if it's type 2 or type 3 or what, but
You're gonna really put me on the spot on this one. I'm not sure, but we did look over this design in alignment with your landscaping plan and didn't see any major issues. Whether it's type 1 or type 2, I don't recall right now.
Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, well, while we're on this perspective of the rear, I was just curious, how is that, because where we see the end of the rendering there, is that near like the end of the property line there? And then if so, would there be any sort of, is there any fencing between the end of the property and the railroad property, or is that required by code? I wasn't certain about that.
I think we could defer to Tracy on that. I mean, we're not showing on any of our drawings a fence, but certainly as an option.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's currently a fence there between, me and the yellow train. It's basically been the view. But I don't know, whether that fence would stay, or I would have to refer to Dylan to tell, is that going to be a mandatory
So
fence
generally,
that needs to be there or not?
with our sign code or our city code for this, I'm not sure about this, but the railroad access or being able to walk onto the railroad tracks is usually a big concern. And every fence along there has every parcel pretty much has a fence there. Now, I'm not sure if that means it's a requirement or it was a chosen option. I need to look into it further. We haven't come across this problem very often.
So specifically, there's no fence required for this project. They have to have the landscape permitting, you can see, but they don't need to have a fence. They could certainly choose to install one, and obviously their backdoor neighbor, the Railroad Museum, could choose to install a fence on their own property right next to it. I don't know who owns the current fence, whether it's Ms. Hovinga or the Railroad Museum, but I think regardless, we're going to see a fence there one way or another, whether they install it or the Railroad Museum installs it. So,
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
One quick follow-on question, if I may.
Mhm.
I was just curious if there has been any engagement with the property owners on either side of the project at this point yet.
No,
on
not
the
unless it's
city's end.
required by the staff. I was under the impression that this was noticed to the adjoining property owners, but I don't know.
Yeah, I can tell you that if you're looking at the property, the owner to my left, she bought the property about the same time that I bought that land. And she's aware, we've had discussions, and she's somewhat aware of what the plans are and very excited about it. I have not had discussions with the neighbor to the right at all.
There's one property right between that and the medical building, I believe. Is it one house?
One or two.
Or it might be two. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so as far as the screening goes, we've got that one set of trees. I might personally want it to be just a little bit more, not so it blocks everything, because I know that you also want to sell the views of those units. So I don't know to what degree those should just be maybe trimmed just slightly bigger or something. I don't know. I
think
just
you
feel
might
like it's
wanna-
just a little bit exposed. That's all I'm saying. Is it just
you
looks
might
a
want to
little
look
exposed.
at the landscape plan, because the rendering doesn't necessarily show
Okay.
the exact same planting that the landscape plan goes. So there it is. It's a 5-foot type 1 buffer.
Give me a sec here.
Wow, that was kind of slow.
It's quite a PDF.
Is it being faxed in?
No, but now you can kind of see just the front. Naples Avenue is on the left side here, so the back of the building is on the right. Now I can actually zoom in and kind of show you the dimensioning.
You've got mail.
Okay, does that help?
Yeah.
So type 1 buffer is what you have listed here, and I do believe that's true for this back rear setback landscaping requirement.
Yeah, that in combination with the existing plantings and trees, I think it'll be a pretty good buffer, actually.
Okay, so other thoughts at this time from the commission? Questions, comments? We're gonna have time to digest this. We're not taking a vote tonight. We can sit on it, think a little bit before we go into vote. But yeah, just other concerns, etc. that you want to bring up at this point. Yeah, Commissioner Brusiak.
Me here. Yeah, quick question. The rooftop view, it looked like on the edge was where the HVAC is. Was that real? You've got these tiny little HVACs on top?
Yeah, those are planters.
No, on the inside there. Yeah, you're right where your cursor is.
Yeah, those will be for the individual units.
Yeah, I don't remember what are those units called, Les? They're
Let's see. I'm drawing a blank too. Anyway, yeah, they'll be kind of coolant lines running up to the roof, and then for the condensers, and the rest of the unit will be inside the house, kind of a ducting system.
So there's like
those things are about 3 feet high and they're about 3 feet long and maybe a foot and a half wide or so. There'll be one for each unit. So there'll be 11 of those up there somewhere. We haven't engaged a mechanical consultant yet to best determine where those would be, but
A mini split.
a mini splits, yeah, they would be certainly lower than the guardrail requirement.
Okay. Usually they're clustered, or they're on a roof, and there's no thought to put them on the ground level. They definitely will be on the roof, right?
They'd work out a lot better on the roof. We don't typically put those things. We do a lot of mixed use projects, and we don't typically put those things on the ground.
Okay.
You know, and especially between the noise and the screening requirements, the roof is generally a better location for equipment like that. It's just out of the way more. You know, on the ground, it starts getting in the way of things.
Right, no, I understand.
So I just think it'll be pretty common to see things like that on roofs and not so much on the ground. Certainly we're not going for the let's mount it to the side of the wall like you see in some situations. So
Right, but my follow-up then is, if it's dispersed on a roof like that, is there accessibility concerns? Do they need to be shielded from the public that might go up there, or from the residents?
Well, I would think we would want to put some sort of barrier to keep any sort of public away from them. But we wouldn't have it tall. It would certainly be, no need to be any taller than the units, but we'd want to have the, a fence, if you want to call it that, around those, but set far enough away from them that they would have room to access them for service.
Right. They seem extremely compact, but
yeah, they're quite small.
Okay. And usually it's such an obvious feature on roofs. I just want to make sure it was covered here. And second, on the side view, you talked about it with the different flags. So you're doing a mix of vertical, horizontal, and other type of material on the front facing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. It's interesting.
Yeah, so brick on the wings on your way in, that's the board and batten. And then what's the nickname for this? The
Lap.
lap. Yeah, thank you.
And it's all going to be some off-white type of color, as we're
Yes.
seeing here?
Okay. So the texture is kind of to try and help the massing,
And help the what?
help to break up the density, or just kind of create extra.
Yeah, the texture of the siding is what, and the trim pieces in between the various sidings are what we're using to break up the massing of the building.
Okay.
And
Well,
that's
that's
to
why-
achieve. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I would like to see a little bit more what that's going to look like, but I definitely think it spruces up the downtown, and congrats on being able to propose such an ambitious project. So, yeah, I'm interested to see as this evolves. Okay.
Yeah, it will not go unnoticed. Okay.
Hopefully all in a good way, right?
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts from the commission before I move on? All right. I would like to thank our guests, and in case anything comes up when we do go to a vote and maybe a meeting or two at most, the folks would join us to field any questions. Because sometimes what happens is that there's just a very simple misunderstanding, and if the developers had just been there, they could have answered the question for us and just avoid a lot of heartache. So I'd ask you guys to please come back if you have the time when we next meet about this.
When would the next meeting be?
Good question, staff.
Well, most likely January 18th, which is a Tuesday. The next scheduled meeting is January 3rd, but that's not likely to happen because of holidays and staff vacation.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So are you saying that January 18th would be the soonest that we would kind of get the approval on the design
I think so.
and then next move forward?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think what Tracy is getting at is, we'd like to get some sort of idea on, when we could be assured that we won't have to be making a major change here so that we can at least start preparing the drawings for permit and see if we could have some overlap timing wise between maybe finishing up discussions about the materials or while we're addressing the major components to get this engineered and prepped for a building permit review.
I can't speak for the commission, but it doesn't sound like I heard any major disagreements of those sorts of things. But you know, certainly the commission could decide at our next meeting, hey, you know, we thought about it for a little bit, we sat on it, and we really just don't like this feature because, and of course, we got to give a specific reason why and all that stuff. So I can't promise anything, is all I'm saying.
So I'll make a motion to approve it tonight then?
Right.
Yes, please.
Did I say that out loud? Sorry about that.
Right. All right. So thank you very much. Does anyone else have anything that they wanted to add before I move on?
Actually, as I was looking at the design one last time,
Yeah.
if you, just kind of parting idea, I don't know how others feel about it, but if you were considering bringing the elevator shaft up depending on where that's located, it might be interesting to kind of carry that silo treatment through to the elevator shaft as well, just for sort of a consistency. I'm not sure how that would look and feel, but
Try it back.
I would actually agree with that. Yeah. Okay.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you.
right, so are we
Okay.
dismissed?
Yes. You can go have recess.
You're more welcome to stay if you'd like to.
All right.
Yeah, that's
Thank
right.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thanks for your
Take
time.
care.
thank you.
Okay, that takes us to the next item, which is the comprehensive plan and municipal code docket.
Sure. So there's a memo in the packet that describes docketing, and so I previously indicated that we did not receive any requests. This was not correct due to a combination of staff schedules and some just glitches in how the requests were submitted. I didn't receive these until a couple days after the November 1st Planning Commission meeting. So we received 5 requests. I will say 2 of them have since been withdrawn. So the 5 are described in the memo. There's 3 to amend the comprehensive plan and 2 to amend the code. The 2 to amend the code have been withdrawn. So the way the process works, as laid out in the city's code, is that I will write a report and recommendation for the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission gets that, and beginning in January, gets to start looking at the requested comprehensive plan amendments to see, you know, should they essentially make a recommendation to the council, should they be enacted or not. And certainly there's an opportunity to work on precise wording of the amendments should we get to that point. So this is really just a heads up and to kind of identify where the process is laid out and certainly what the requested amendments are. So I summarized the requested amendments in the memo. The full text of what was requested is attached as you can read it. All 5, or I guess the 3 we'll be considering came from Mr. Scheel, and we'll have more discussion about that coming in January.
Okay, so at this time, we can just ask a few clarifying questions about process and that sort of thing, but we're not really digging into the details here, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner, I cannot get this right.
Aleph.
Aleph.
We'll get through it, no worries.
I'm sorry. Aleph.
Could you clarify which, as they're numbered 1 through 5 here, which two have been withdrawn?
Numbers 4 and 5.
Great, thank you so much.
Oh, okay.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, kind of fun reading those. Okay, let's see. So the idea is that these will come back in January, and would these need to be, if they were to be adopted, would they need to be approved by the planning commission and then move to council, or what exactly is the process there?
The planning commission will make a recommendation, whether it's to
Got it.
adopt or deny.
Or reject or whatever, okay.
Yeah, or whatever the term will end up being, but the commission will make a full recommendation on the individual amendments, and the city council makes the final decision.
Okay.
These are, by the way, considered a legislative item. They're not quasi-judicial, so there's no restrictions in that regard. You can discuss to your heart's content, anybody and everybody.
Great. I'm very curious to hear how number 2 especially would work. It's very interesting.
The current comprehensive plan has some general discussion and policies about jobs housing balance. As is typical for many comprehensive plans, that discussion, broadly speaking, is pretty generalized, which is to say, we're trying to balance overall number of housing units with number of jobs, things like that. The request is more specific to say the comprehensive plan should consider addressing, for example, we may need affordable or workforce housing to provide housing for people who work in retail or service sector jobs versus higher end single family residential homes for people who work in, as an example, tech sector jobs. I believe is what the request is, broadly speaking, is talking about.
Thanks. Okay, other questions from the commission?
Is it premature for us to receive a brief description from the requester at this point in time?
I'd say that's really up to the discretion of the commission. I have no objection to it at this point. Only to note that per the code, I have to provide a report and recommendation in January, and I haven't had a chance to do so yet. But beyond that, if you want to hear from Mr. Scheel, he's in attendance, and
that's just checking.
I presume he would. It could at least speak to them a little bit.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
All right.
Okay, hi. So I appreciate the chance to chat. As Jason mentioned, that a lot of these, actually all 3 of these are kind of refinements on things that are to some extent addressed in the comprehensive plan. And the reason, and just broadly, is that I wanted to bring these up is because the comprehensive plan is the vision for the city, and all the codes and things are supposed to be driven by the comprehensive plan. So sometimes shades of meaning in the comprehensive plan can have a much bigger effect than was may have been envisioned by people. So for instance, the one on water rights, it's in general that projects need to have enough water to serve them, like the Snoqualmie Hills West proposal was rejected because there wasn't enough water, was the main reason. But what I'm looking for there is, because water rights are so difficult to obtain, I'm suggesting that language be in there to say, don't even go way down the process, and then at a final city council vote, have them say, no, don't bother with this project because it doesn't have water. Make it really almost like an entry requirement for a big project, that if it's going to need enough water that it makes a difference in the water plan, then that would almost be like a beginning thing when a developer would be coming to the city to propose something, that if they don't have a solution for the water, then don't even bother taking the staff time to analyze all the other stuff like building heights and colors and things like that. Make sure it's got the basic need of water, because water is tough to get those water rights. The one on job types and housing types, what Jason alluded to is very much so, because as I watch the city council making decisions on things, often there'll be talk of, this project will bring a bunch of jobs, or we need housing to meet, because we got this many jobs or whatever. but we keep building, well, almost exclusively, we've been building big, what are now $1 million houses and bringing in jobs that pay almost minimum wage. And so you have this big stream of people commuting out of the city every morning to go to Bellevue and Redmond and Seattle, and a big stream of people commuting in from other communities to take the retail jobs and service jobs. And so what I proposed there was to, we've been so wildly out of balance because my understanding from, before I was paying attention to city development is that often a developer building sections of the ridge would, instead of building an assortment of affordable and more expensive housing, they could build all the very profitable, expensive housing and pay a fee to say, well, someday in the future, someone else will build affordable housing. And so now we have this big deficit of affordable housing. And so my proposal there is to strongly word in the comprehensive plan, acknowledging that we are way out of balance between the character of the jobs that are available in the city and the character of the housing that's available in the city, that the only way to bring it into balance is to do a major shift in the opposite direction, not just it would be nice to trim a little bit here and there, but really a significant, like almost any housing to be built from now on would have to be built affordable in order to bring the city even close to being in balance. So that's kind of the point there. And again, we'll discuss more of the trying to convince or whatever when this actually comes before the Planning Commission and City Council. But and then the growth targets, this has been a sore point between some members of the community and the city government for a while now, that the regional planning organizations for, I guess, PSRC has set growth targets for communities. And the city has explicitly, I'll be open about it. My beef is primarily with the mayor, that he has gone to PSRC.
We don't have to talk about these specific politics. Yeah, we could just stick to what's on the table. Thank you.
He has presented formal declarations to PSRC saying these should be minimums, not mid-range targets. And again, wanting to reinforce in the city's prime planning document of the comprehensive plan that yes, we really are going to aim for the target as where we're trying to get to be and not treat it as a minimum. So those are kind of a quick summary of what I got.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing what these might look like when they come back in January as more formal proposals of what the language would be in the comprehensive plan and those discussions.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing.
Quick question, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
Just number 2 prompted something that I don't know if anybody's looked at it or not. I'm really curious about in light of, since the pandemic with people working remotely, and probably many working remotely permanently, has the city or has the state looked at like where people are working, how many are still commuting out of the city to jobs versus how many are now working at home either most of the time or full-time? And then for those that are full-time and no longer in an office, shouldn't they be paying B&O tax to the local jurisdiction versus Seattle or wherever they don't ever appear?
Yes.
Especially if they don't have an office anymore?
There are lots of good questions embedded in that, and I think the answer is we don't really have good firm data so far. I think it's something we'll hopefully start picking up on as the next versions of the American Community Survey. That's the Census Bureau's rolling statistical survey. As we start seeing future versions of that, and certainly there are some other surveys that happen that start to give us some insight into that. But for right now, I don't think we have a great idea, other than if you look at traffic, both in Snoqualmie and around the region, I think it's pretty clear that there has been some level of shift, but it's difficult to quantify that right now. As to the tax issue, I don't know. I can check with the finance department on that to see the guidance on that one.
Yeah. I think
Probably
it's
drifting outside of our scope.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
He
yeah,
still has
yeah.
a question. Okay. If there is nothing else on this item, then we can move on to the downtown relook. And for that, as always, I will ask members of the public, of which we have one, if they wanted to share any thoughts about this item. Now would be the time to raise your hand and let us know. Give me just a moment here. Okay, then that will take us to staff to tell us what is new and what their hopes and dreams are for us tonight.
Should we start with hopes and dreams, or who would you like to end there? No, I'll go ahead and share my screen. So, okay. So I don't think we've seen this for a little while. This is the standard, code worksheet that we've been working with to modify some of the codes related to development in the historic district in downtown Snoqualmie, as well as it relates to the call out to the downtown vision and master plan, both documents that the city has generated, and their references specifically to Falls Avenue frontage and how that interacts with the development standards that we currently have in the city. So, and I'm doing this just as prep. I feel like we can't just keep starting from the very end here, especially with new commissioners. So this,
yes.
yeah, I'm sorry, I caught myself midway through talking, and I was like, oh, I gotta slow down. So essentially what we're doing here is we're looking at code sections that are part of the downtown historic district's development standards and making changes to them that reflect a improvement in the historic look and feel and character, essentially just improvements in either accuracy, quality of the language, descriptions that do not reflect adequately the goals of the historic district's development standards. So in doing so, we pulled from, so for instance, here in the street furniture one, we pulled from Chelan's code. And Chelan's code had a more robust description of a lot of the streetscape features. So what we've done is taken this section that was previously it is currently in the SMC, Snoqualmie Municipal Code, and we are drafting a replacement language set. So what you'll see here is the drafted replacement set. The color coding here is just to help as we work through, we make kind of fast changes. Sometimes I've made changes between meetings that I want the commission to look at. So you'll see the red strikeout, that's from Chelan's code, that's just not applicable anymore. And we've adapted it to meet Snoqualmie's code language on what type of project it is, not what level Chelan's code is, for example. Talking about, last time we had a discussion about how much linear store frontage would be representative of how many amenities. And then further on this page, you'll see there's a whole list of example amenities that would need to be in place if, let's say, a business totally redeveloped on somewhere in the downtown historic district. So for example, this building that we just reviewed earlier, let's say in 50 years or whenever a building like that gets redeveloped, they would have to confront this list of development standards for street frontage. So they might, and I was going to jokingly say, have to add a clock, a historic featured clock, but we took that off the list specifically. So instead they'll have to, pick some artwork or something. But essentially this is a list of those examples. And that's what you'll see on this first section is the kind of change outs to streetscape features here. And nothing's really changed here except for I just wanted to confirm on this public trash receptacles if 50 linear feet was appropriate. That's the only question I have on this section, but the meat and potatoes of tonight's topic will be on changes to development site standards for screening, like what you're going to call it, trash receptacle screening, utility screening, recycling, obviously. So if you've ever driven down Falls Avenue and you've looked towards the businesses and you've seen the backside of the business, a lot of them have a lot of trash bins and utilities and utility boxes and meters and stuff. And this is kind of to address the aesthetic character of those and how they don't necessarily feel like a frontage if they have ugly utility stuff going on. So what I've
also
done,
have limited space back
and they have
there.
limited space. Yeah, exactly. That's very appropriate. So what I did is in the conversation, there was a request for, what could this look like? What are our options? And so I went and polled, I can't remember how many cities, I think 4, and then Jason added 2 from Issaquah. But these are examples of other city code that tries to address this in code language that we could take and use. There's no rule on plagiarism here, so we just need to adapt it appropriately. And in kind of reading through this, I kind of came to what I thought was the most reasonable city's code to adopt from. But I wanted to give a little bit of time here to, I don't know, if you read through these and you have strong opinions on which codes actually apply, or this code language is just dumb, doesn't make sense for our city, or this is great, I want to see something like this. I could also give a quick breakdown of the code language that I found, and then I brought in some imagery here to kind of encapsulate some of the, just to bring it all home, I guess, just some graphics there. So I guess, where would you like to start? Would you like to finish up this last little bit on is 50 feet for a trash receptacle is reasonable? And then we can move to the last section.
Yeah, I am perfectly happy myself with the entire top section, but I have obviously don't speak for the commissions. So I'd be happy to just hear that. And then, Commissioner Aliff, go ahead.
I was going to say the same thing. I have no concerns at the top. I did want to get down to the bottom and get Dylan's recommendation on which city he preferred and why.
Yeah, I'd like to get that.
And why that might save us some time too.
Let me just make sure with other commissioners, if you object, now's the time to speak up. And just a little more context here. This process has been a very long time coming. My very first vote on the commission was based on some recommendations that they had already been working on for months in advance, and that was a couple of years ago. So this has been a long process. Okay, let's go ahead and jump on down. So Dylan, you can go ahead and lead away on that section then.
Okay, so this right here, what you're seeing is the current SMC for site planning standards. Specifically, what we would be plucking out of existence is D and replacing it with some code language from one of these other cities. Jason, I'm sorry to throw you under the bus here, but I prefer Bellevue's code language for this. I feel like it, and Jason and I had a long conversation about kind of our read on these different code languages. But the only downside for me for Bellevue's code language is that it does have a leaning towards taller buildings and rooftop screening. But I felt that a lot of the language could be pretty easily pulled in and used, with the exception of maybe this, screening graphics used for at-grade utility boxes. I don't know if that's necessarily appropriate for our downtown. That's probably more of a Bellevue scale development. And same with, there's something in here about height of buildings. But generally, I found that having been a participant in the conversation that we've all been going through regarding trash screening and mechanical equipment screening, I kind of felt that this language was clear. It includes much more detail on what features and things like that. And then there was one last piece I wanted to pull from Chelan's code, and I don't need to go up to it because I know what it says, but it essentially says retaining the historical character of the building's architectural features.
Yeah, we have to have that.
Yep, so there's a lot on here. There's a lot of code language from a lot of cities. I'll leave it there. That's my read. Jason can tell you his opinion as well. He's biased because he's worked at some of these places and I haven't, but that's fair.
One thing that I would just mention about the Bellevue, even if it does talk about what's on the roof, I mean, up on penthouses or whatever. I mean, if we do have buildings that are 2-3 stories that have an upper balcony, they could have something like that. And, we should have the code language still apply to anything that's up there. So if, I'm on the street, I don't look up and see a big trash can at the top of the building, right? But anyway, yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Well, you heard Dylan describe, this thing in general. And I was one who kind of brought up the counter that Bellevue's is certainly more oriented toward, or, appears to be oriented more toward rooftop screening generally. Obviously, that subsection 1B there is talking about things that might be on the ground. So it's certainly not limited. I think if you want to call them, my overall concern with Bellevue's is that it's aimed at mechanical equipment more and less so at, service areas, which isn't a fatal flaw here because, as Dylan was describing, we can take elements that we like and adapt them to our own needs. As Dylan said, there's no plagiarism here really. None of this is copyrighted. Back in college, my classmates and I coined the term, and I'm sure we stole it from somewhere else, adaptive reuse. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. I think there's enough in all of these code sections that Dylan has pulled in to grab the things that would work well here.
Commissioner Aliff, is that the same hand from before? Do you have something new?
Your hand.
Okay, go ahead.
Name right this time too. Congrats, awesome.
Yeah, I think I'm getting there.
One thing I noticed about Bellevue, and maybe you can correct me if I'm breezing through this too quickly, but it lacks a minimal height, where some of the others specified like 6 feet, for example, for specific. I think one thing I would like to add to the Bellevue to make it more acceptable is ensure that, given we have a lot of ground-oriented things, that it's taller than a typical person. If our objective is to obscure these things.
Yeah, and you could, and I think it's a good comment, especially because we are, especially in the context of downtown, we are dealing with a lot of ground level service, areas here that do need to be screened. A couple of them have a 6 foot requirement.
This one says as high as is needed, which is essentially leaving it to the discretion of review process by staff.
Yeah.
As tall as is needed, as determined by X, not determined by the individual, right?
Yeah,
So
but, and that's an interesting conversation because, the city attorney would tell you that, having language like that is all well and good, but if somebody really, really, really wants to push hard on you, that becomes a little more problematic, and it's more helpful in those situations to have it's like, no, the standard is 6 feet, period. And that's often the city attorney's general viewpoint because, that's his role is to help with those situations, but it doesn't mean you need to necessarily go that far. I think, let's see, at least I think the ISQUAL ones show 6 feet. I thought Chelan's did, but maybe I'm wrong on that. So I'm just looking at them on my other screen here. So I'm not ignoring you guys. Anyway, but some kind of 6 foot minimum requirement would be helpful. There's also an interesting discussion around, what kind of screening is appropriate. That there's a couple that talk about having essentially solid fences or cinder block walls or something along those lines, whereas some others might allow, vegetation in lieu of, and some require both, so that you have a very solid wall that's going to block views, noises, things like that, and then that wall is then softened by landscaping. Certainly in the downtown area, that may be a little more challenging to have effective landscape screening when the properties are in general so intensely developed, built right up to the property edges and things like that. But it's another thing to consider.
That's why I brought these images of some of these just for clarity of concept. But yeah, I was actually going to say something about the vegetation being maybe spindly is maybe an apt description of what would happen if we saw some developers try to put plants to cover their trash bins.
Yeah. I mean, I will admit that I'm somewhat partial to the central ISQUAL plan one, the second of the ISQUAL ones, but that's just me. I mean, I know who wrote the ISQUAL, both those ISQUAL ones, for what it's worth. the Central Escrow Plan 1 is a little bit newer than the Rowley Development Agreement version. I don't necessarily know if you'd want to pick the whole thing up entirely because of just because of the way Issaquah is, that particular, if you want to call it design standard, is structured. It's a design standard, a separate document more akin to what you would find in Snoqualmie Ridge than code language, and so we would have to rewrite it a bit in that regard. But that goes for almost any of these, where we'd be picking things up and inserting them and having to adjust the language to fit the city's code.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm reading through these, is there, going back to Dylan especially, is there something that's in the Bellevue code that is not in the Issaquah code that you want to capture?
No, it wasn't so much that there's a lacking or anything. It was just that I had a personal preference on writing style and how I felt like that one wrote or read like our current Snoqualmie Municipal Code in terms of describing the features of a building and things like that. But like Jason said, we could retool the Issaquah code to make it sound like that. It was more work on me, so I turned it away.
You like the short one.
Gotta teach Dylan how to write code sometime.
Yeah.
Well, then let's take the Vancouver, Washington code. That's only 3 lines.
I thought about saying that, but that was gonna be too easy.
I would gravitate more toward the Issaquah. I feel like it really covers
the Central or the Rowley.
Oh, the Central. Honestly, where's the Rowley development? I really don't know that word.
So the Rowley Development Agreement covers land owned by Rowley Properties, and it's generally properties on both sides of State Route 900 between roughly I-90 and the Issaquah Transit Center. So,
okay.
So all the where the if you get off I-90 at exit 15, which is at State Route 900, hang out and then go south. What you'll see is there's all those older warehouses on the west side of 900. They'll be off your right if you're going that direction. That's all owned by Rowley Properties, and then the kind of office park, business park area on the left side, on the east side of Gilman Boulevard, of State Route 900, is also owned by Rowley Properties. So it's kind of that whole area, and they signed a development agreement with the city 6-7 years ago, I think, to cover 30 years worth of redevelopment.
I mean, it could be that, the central Issaquah plan might have more detail than what we need. For example, they go into the stream needs to be placed in alleys. Although, I guess in my head, I just keep gravitating toward Falls Avenue because that's really where this is an issue. But I guess, technically we're talking about the entire area here. So I suppose we do have alleys, don't we, in other parts, downtown historic area? Do we have anything that counts as an alley?
I don't think in the historic district that this code language is referring to, because not even in the Meadowbrook do we have an alley back behind those buildings, which technically is included in the historic district.
Yeah, because we have, Falls Avenue, as you've seen, kind of serves as a de facto alley. Now there is I lost my zoning map here. Where'd it go? Let's see, so what's within the...
Maybe behind Sahara Pizza in 30 years?
Yeah, but that's not the behind there is zoned open space. So,
oh yeah, that's great.
The only place where you have that's within the historic district that's backs onto an alley is the hardware store.
Right.
So that's kind of the only place where you'd have a true alley in place. Now, certainly the properties on the behind that alley, which is to say the properties that more or less front on the park, where the current revetment project is taking place, those are also zoned commercially, but they are not part of the historic district. If that's not confusing. Here, let me...
You can hit screen share. But so just to help kind of bring the goal, hopes and dreams, like we said earlier, if there was a version of these... Okay.
You can see that this is the alley here between Park and Falls. So there's that alley, but only a small fraction right here, right up near River Street, is within this black line is the historic district. So from an alley standpoint, there's not much. And so, I mean, the discussion, as we've long acknowledged, is largely around Falls Avenue.
Okay.
So to get back kind of to the goal, hopes and dreams here of this section, I pulled together 6 because I wanted to receive feedback on the direction. If there was one of these that stood out as a good example, what I'd like to do is take it and refine it into the code and essentially plug it in play. I'm going to have to take some changes, like the build to line is in Issaquah's, and they call out different sections that don't matter.
Like what's the circulation facility?
Yeah, I mean, Issaquah's definition of circulation facility is everything from a road to a pedestrian pathway in the context of the Central Issaquah plan. So it's quite a bit broader than we'd be dealing with here. And it's things like that we could just, we may just even just remove that entirely or revise it heavily to say, don't block the sidewalk or something. Yeah, but that's an example of something that doesn't necessarily work with how we're set up.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I do gravitate toward the Central Issaquah plan, but I'd love to hear from other commissioners about their thoughts. I like that it gives us more to work with.
Yeah,
Commissioner Aliff.
That's what I was going to ask was why. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no objection to starting with that.
I agree. I think it's a good starting point. There's probably more detail than we need in some sections, but it hopefully at least provides a good starting point, and we can either scale back from there.
Yep, it'll be easier to take things out than it would be to add it in, I think is my point.
Hope agree.
Do you have any tenants' beliefs that you structure your code around? Any standards like you come, whether or not everything goes for review or where you act as a exception approval, anything that helps me understand overall which structure might be more similar to how we're operating here?
Well, I'd say the current historic district code is a combination of having some firm standards in place. For one, a height limit would be a good example of there's a hard line there, as you heard, the height limit's 35 feet, period. And there are some limited exceptions to that, but in general, you're not going to do that. But then we also have some more design standardy things. Dylan, if you pull up the historic district code, just pull up the architectural standards or something.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Versus the architectural standards have some more, designy language of encouraging some things, but not outright requiring. And so it's left more up to design review board and or staff interpretation of, does a specific project meet that or not? 210 architectural design standards is fine. Just for an example, or you can see there, subsection B, continue the pattern of massing height bulk established by that. Well, there's a lot of wiggle room within that. You can have something that, generally speaking, continues that, but reasonable people can disagree on to what extent something does or doesn't conform to that. So, and that's always the trick with these types of codes is you inevitably have language like that is not necessarily cut and dry. Yes, you comply. No, you don't. It's like the height limit's 35 feet. Is it 35 feet or not? Because design is just like that. So it does end up being a mix. One thing we've been striving to do is to put some more gates, we think, around certain items. And sometimes the gates are just to give the planning commission, the design review board, some more criteria to work with, because we've seen projects where there's just not a lot of, it seems to fit the criteria, but there's some things we don't really like, but there's not a lot of language to address that. So it ends up being a difficult discussion. I'm sorry, this is a very long-winded answer to your question. But does that kind of give you a little more context of what we're doing here?
That does. And so, am I reading this right? Is that this is a case where you would like to err more on the side of being more specific?
Yes.
Because it would give the public a lot more understanding of what we're looking for. Thus, they would ask fewer questions.
Correct. And it's also a reaction to a certain extent to what's physically there on the ground today. It's to give us a few more teeth to say, hey, look, that I'm not going to pick on anybody in particular, but one specific thing just isn't working because it looks, there's this dumpsters visible and it doesn't look good. And we're trying to make that the street, because there are things in this code that encourage a nice pedestrian oriented streetscape on Falls Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's challenged by the fact that Railroad Avenue is the primary frontage, and these buildings have to have some kind of rear service areas. You can't just have a lovely building on all sides. It doesn't work that way. But the challenge on Falls Avenue is trying to balance that. And right now, we simply don't have. You can see. We have subsection D there. Place the service areas, including trash, in unobtrusive locations and screened from view. That's the sum total of what we're working with right now. So adding a new section, expanding the language would really help us and it would help the applicants to understand what's required, what we're looking for, rather than this very, very generalized language about unobtrusive locations. That doesn't really help anybody at the end of the day.
Right. What someone could say is that, well, it's not on railroad.
Exactly.
Didn't I do it?
Unobtrusive. And essentially, this code language is not necessarily this one, because there's been a long time coming with some of these buildings, but this is the code language that got us to where we are. And so if it exists right now and you see it and it's frustrating, it's probably because there wasn't something here to make it comply with something better. So in theory, we're trying to get rid of this highlighted section here and replace it with something that could be easily held on to by that planning commission to go forward with.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that the Central Issaquah one does that a much better job.
Yeah, just looking at the examples here, I think that the one with the brick is kind of overkill. I can't see that on Falls. I don't know. That just looks massive for that little street. I like
some of the buildings are brick.
It just looks too big. I don't know. And then the wooden one, I don't know. Maybe I'm totally off base here. It looks expensive to me to make it look that nice. I don't know. But anyway, I do appreciate seeing the examples, though, to just kind of get the brain going. So, okay, any other thoughts from the commission on this? I think that we've given staff a direction to go, but, other thoughts about specifically the trash screening utilities and that sort of thing. Okay, not seeing anything. All right, was there anything else on the downtown relook that staff wanted us to look at now?
Not at this time. At the next meeting is when I'll probably be pulling the last, just to call out to those code sections that we've already discussed in previous meetings. I just try to front the new big bulk of material with like a little bit of past review, and so that's essentially what we'll do next time. There'll be a past review of the trash screening stuff with a bit of new things, and then home stretch, hopes and dreams.
Okay. Let me scroll back up to the agenda then. Okay, that will take us to the end of our policy items and into just sort of general business. I don't believe that we have any items of previous planning commissioner interests to go over. If anyone had anything from before, but I'm just not remembering, please speak up now. Okay, then that takes us to other items of planning commissioner interests. Actually, before we do that, I feel like I should insert something because I keep forgetting to do it. And every time we start a new topic, I say, okay, after this one, I'm going to do it. And that is for the absent members from this meeting. I meant to do that earlier in the meeting. But anyway, actually, first let's go to staff and just ask, did you get any emails from any of the members who are not here that they would be missing tonight?
Commissioner Mather did indicate he would not be in attendance.
Okay, just not Commissioner Lambert. All right, can I get a motion to excuse the absent members?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Maruziak, and a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Aliff. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Oh, I'm sorry, hang on. I saw Commissioner Goodman's hand go up, sorry.
Sorry, that was preemptive for after the vote. So
Okay, sorry, all right, let's vote one more time. All in favor say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then that will take us to the items of planning commissioner interest. And the way that we do this is we go around and just ask every commissioner if there's any items of the city that they're interested in getting more information about, policies that may come up, things that they would like to become policy, whatever it is. So like in the past, we've talked about how it'd be really great to have a dog park on the ridge. Just bring it up. That's just been a past thing that they've talked about, just as an example. Okay, Commissioner Smith.
The only item I had, and it kind of hit me today, especially I think it had to do with the lack of busing, but at Timber Ridge Elementary, and I know when we approved this design, a couple commissioners at the time brought up this comment, but I saw today cars backed up onto the parkway and parked on the shoulder of the parkway, probably about 9 or 10 deep I could see, waiting to turn right to get onto Swenson to then pull into the school for pickup. And I'm just curious, I saw some interesting maneuvers while waiting in the queue of cars driving on the left side of the road to go around cars waiting to turn right out of Swenson. It was fascinating is what it was. It was an interesting.
That's a nice way to say it.
Buses like waiting to get around cars. It looked like a mess.
It sounds like a safety issue.
Yeah, we raised it. We raised that during the initial design of the drop-off area.
I think this is one of those situations where, and I have sympathy. I'm an elementary school parent, not Snoqualmie, but I do most of the drop-offs and pickups of my elementary age daughter. I think this is one of those things where COVID has partly it's just changes in how parents transport their children, partly it's COVID. To be entirely honest, I have kept my daughter off the bus because of COVID. She just got her second shot the other day, so my wife and I might change that after winter break, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's a big part of the reason. We're aware it's been a growing issue just generally, more parents are driving their kids than using the bus. That said, it's clearly an issue and backups onto the parkway are not necessarily a good thing. And we can, I'll talk to, I can bring it up tomorrow morning at the leadership team meeting and see what, the chief of police might have some ideas on how to help with that. And the public works department might have some ideas on what we can do here. That was all. Just seeing that as probably an extreme, but guessing, with winter coming and people not wanting to walk, things like that, I'm guessing that will maybe until more people start riding the bus again, like you said. But it does look like a safety.
The school district has a big lack of bus driving staff as well. So I know I live 3 houses down from Fall City Elementary, and those people queue up on the streets all over the place. So
thank you. Nothing else from me.
Okay. For myself, actually, I have a question about busing as well. Is there any particular reason why we don't have shelters for our bus stops, for our metros?
King County Metro has standards for what stops essentially get shelters. The shelters are, interestingly enough, actually placed by King County Metro. So the broad speaking reason is that none of our stops have enough people at them to warrant a shelter within Metro's policies for shelter. With that said, if there are particular locations, somewhat higher ridership locations, we can look at that. Like Dylan's showing the picture of, this is on Railroad Avenue, just south of River Street, that has a shelter. And partly that one has a shelter because it is the part of the parents. Historically, before the downtown infrastructure redo, there was actually a single stop with a little pull off further up at King Street. That was then slid into this southbound stop and then the northbound stop by the bowling alley. And so those both received shelters, as they were essentially the same stop that is a higher volume stop because it's in downtown Snoqualmie. So is there a particular stop you're thinking of that we can try to have a conversation with Metro about, or is it just a general?
Just up and down the parkway.
Understood.
I wonder if there's sort of a chicken and an egg here of what comes first, a nice place to be through our winter months and just not having that.
Yeah, it's a tough one because you're right. There is a bit of chicken egg going on, and of course then there's our general service level is an issue as well, because the bus only comes about every 2 hours. I think for those of you who aren't aware, Metro is currently in the middle of a public outreach for their East Side bus system redesign for light rail. And one of the things that in the most current proposal that Metro is proposing is to add a direct connection to light rail from Snoqualmie at Mercer Island. So the bus would come about every 90 minutes instead of every 2 hours. So better than what we've got, and it'd be a nice ride all further than Issaquah. So it's a worthwhile conversation we can have with Metro about, hey, our people are often waiting a long time because of service level in the dark and rain.
Yeah, and as they push light rail further out into the suburbs, then they could push buses further out, and we could increase lines. But that's going to be something that's going to take a while. I mean,
right.
I don't think light rail gets to Issaquah until 2040 something.
Yeah, quite a way out.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, thanks. That does help, because I've just always wondered. I was like, well, yeah, no one's there because no one wants to be there.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go on to Commissioner Mrziak.
All right, thank you. So a couple things. General question, a couple specifics. Does the city's maintenance budget, is it adequate to do everything that we used to do pre-pandemic?
No. The budget is adequate. Staffing level is reduced from where we were pre-pandemic.
Okay, a couple of specifics. One, and I guess it goes to the, when will the parkway be resurfaced? But a lot of that rubber in the area that was put down on the cracks in the area towards the I-90 interchange is kind of balled up, and you're driving over it. I mean, it's not in the crack anymore. So that struck me as odd. And then prior to the Boeing Classic, a pole down by the fire station got knocked down. I noticed a couple weeks ago the pole on the entrance, this is the parkway pole, on the entrance to the golf course got knocked down. And I don't know where that one went. That one kind of disappeared. But the one by the fire station's been laying in the ditch there for 6 months. So I'm just kind of curious, is that waiting on maintenance funding, staffing, or is there something else that's causing such a delay?
The light poles specifically are waiting on new ones to be manufactured.
Oh, well, really?
I don't know if you all recall, but we've had multiple delays on other projects involving poles. But both the Hawk signal there at Fisher, but also those flashing light crossings that are in downtown Snoqualmie. We saw significant delays on manufacturing of those poles, and this is another case of the manufacturers were backed up because of the supply chain issues.
So when these things got knocked down, they were destroyed? They couldn't be reused?
Yeah.
Wow. And is there any responsibility for somebody who knocks these things down?
If we know who did it, yes, their insurance would end up paying for it. If we don't know who did it, that's obviously more problematic, and the city's insurance or maintenance budget pays for it.
All right, well, okay.
So-
It just, I don't know what it is about that side of the street that these poles, that's the third one I've been aware of in like the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so different subject. I used to ask Mark this, but I'll direct it to you, Jason. So again, it's December. We're usually due for one big snow every winter. Are we ready with all the staffing going on?
We are generally ready. Yes, staffing is more of a concern, but we do have sufficient staffing to address, snow events. We have more equipment than we have in the past. We bought we had to replace a fair number of pickup trucks in the Parks and Public Works fleet recently. And when we did so, we got more capable trucks that have attachments for snowplows. So we're in pretty good shape.
Right, but we have the drivers for them?
Yeah, emergency events like that tend to result in, frankly, a lot of overtime and a lot of staff working a lot of hours. Over a long period of time, that obviously creates issues with, staff burnout and things like that. But over a shorter period for an emergency response, we certainly have the people we need to keep everything going.
Okay. And then finally, just compliments to you and Dylan. Dylan, your internet and sharing screen working awesome. So that's awesome. And appreciate the fact that today we had the owner, her partner, and an architect discuss a project first out the gate. I really appreciate that. So thanks guys. Compliments. Yeah, that's all I have.
Yes, that was helpful. All right, that takes us to Commissioner Aliff.
I'm a new commissioner, so I get to ask the beginner stuff.
Great.
And it's not about a specific issue within the city, but what does every staff wish that every commissioner would read?
Oh, geez. Well, hopefully Glenn got you the Plan Commissioner Handbook. If not, I know we've had some delays in onboarding because of staffing issues, especially in the IT department. So that's.
I haven't yet, just because there's some things that need to be changed. Our meeting times have shifted, and there's a section there that has the planning commissioner roster, which is definitely outdated. And but I will get that to you.
Yeah. I mean, beyond that, I don't necessarily want to load new commissioners down with lots of reading. Reading the code is frankly kind of boring, and that's to a large extent. And to a large extent, that's our job as staff to read the code and understand the code, and our job to help convey that to you. I mean, we'll certainly show you the language that's in question, but I don't expect you to go read however many hundreds of pages that make up the code. It's kind of crazy. But at least having a general, I think it's useful if you have a general idea of how the code is laid out and what you're often dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Not know all the nitty-gritty details. But just looking at the zoning code, Title 17, the zoning code, is often helpful.
How about the master plan?
I was going to mention next, again, the same thing with at least scanning through the city comprehensive plan to understand what is the city's, big picture planning vision. I think is really helpful. The Planning Commission doesn't deal too much with things on Snoqualmie Ridge, and so it's a little less important to understand those documents. Plus, those are, it's again more documents to read, more hundreds of pages of things. Beyond that,
plan.
Yeah, I mean, beyond that, you can dive down the rabbit hole pretty deeply. A great on a website called MRSC, which is a great resource for all things city. Local governments, so city and counties. They've got pages on planning, pages on governance, pages on environmental review. If you really want to go down that rabbit hole, there's some really interesting stuff in there. So that's I think my general answer.
Great. How about you, Dylan and Gwen?
There's also some trainings that I don't know if you got from our city clerk, Deb Estrada. Like Jason had mentioned, I had tried to onboard you, so pretty soon you'll have your own separate City of Snoqualmie email address.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's happened yet with all their staffing challenges, all of our staffing challenges. But there's a training that I can send you the link to, and it's like takes 16 minutes, and it's just kind of like Open Public Meetings Act training. So we'll get that out to you as soon as possible.
How about the other commissioners?
Oh,
Then I think they got it already. Did you guys not get it from Deb? I know she.
Yes,
I think she
we got
got that. Yeah.
yeah.
Haven't watched it.
Oh man, there's something I was going to add, and now I forgot what it was. Oh well, it must not have been too important.
That's okay.
Yeah, we'll see if it comes back to me. All right.
That was it.
Anything else? Yeah, anything else? All right. Oh, yes, I remember what it was. So since we do have 3 new commissioners, they'll be starting between now and early January. It might be worthwhile to bring in the city attorney for an executive session about what, maybe even not executive session, whatever is appropriate, but just to go over again what a quasi-judicial process is. Just make sure that everyone is up to speed on what all that is in the process and everything.
You're earning points with your soon-to-be colleague on the council. Commissioner Christensen asked the same question right before she got onto the council. So it is on our list to go over, but thanks for the reminder.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. And then finally, Commissioner Goodman.
I guess a couple quick things. First, I actually work for King County Metro, so not that I'm in the shelter department, but never hurts to shake the branches a little bit to get their attention because they got it coming from a lot of angles. Second is, maybe this was on an email that I missed, but it looks like ex-Commissioner Scheel is no longer on the commission.
Correct.
So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And sorry to see him go, but it looks like we've got some new members here. It looks like there was a memo on the last page of the packet here about election of chair and vice chair that I guess we didn't get to.
I think that's the next item, isn't it?
Yeah, we just haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, never mind then. That's I need to read the agenda closer. That's it then.
Great, thank you. Okay, and speaking of the election of chair and vice chair procedure.
So I included the memo mostly as informational at this point. Certainly, if the commission chose, you could hold an election for chair and vice chair for 2022 now, but with a couple absent commissioners and one more new commissioner coming, it's probably best to hold that till the first January meeting.
Fully agree.
Unfortunately, depending on your point of view, I think the current vice chair would have to chair the first January meeting until we can elect somebody new.
That's fine.
Yeah. But like I say, it's just for information at this point, and we can address it more closely in January.
Right. That is a thing that's coming.
There is one thing that I wasn't aware of. You mentioned that the liaison or could be a chair or vice chair. I didn't know you'd mix the recommended and decision-making bodies. So that's in fact, if council member elect Johnson wished to remain chair, he could. And I'm not suggesting that's good, but that's pretty much what you wrote up there. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, the council liaison and the mayor are in fact official members of the planning commission per the city's code, and so they are not excluded from being the chair or the vice chair. But as the memo states, by practice they aren't. But there's nothing preventing that, and because this is an advisory body, there's generally not an issue with that. There are certain situations that may be more awkward than others, quasi-judicial things being the obvious example.
Right.
But like I said, there's no prohibition on it. It's just custom.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'd be curious to think what I'm going to call you Chair Johnson right now, Councilmember-elect Johnson, what your thoughts are on that. I mean, I'm almost thinking there'd be a conflict between somebody in the decision-making body driving the agenda, even as a non-voting member for a advisory body. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
I would, if that were to occur, then I would do it. I was going to say in the same way that the mayor is the chair of the city council meetings. However, a huge difference would be that I probably would rarely take part in discussions beyond what you've seen from Councilmember Ross, where if I think there's something really important that I would have to add, if that were to occur, then my only thing would just be recognizing speakers and moving us through the agenda.
Yeah, the memo does also state that procedurally, while nominations don't require a second, the nominee has to accept the nomination. And so certainly hypothetically, if someone were to nominate the council liaison as chair, that council liaison could decline the nomination.
Right.
Good. Okay. Clarified.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Councilmember-elect Johnson.
Thank you very much. It was a tough election. Okay, I believe that takes us to the end of our agenda. Oh, no, it doesn't. There's one more thing, the upcoming schedule from staff.
So you heard earlier about the January 3rd meeting is highly likely to be canceled, and that's mostly due to that meeting falling right after the New Year holiday, and that most of us are taking a couple weeks off in December. I think Gwen's off the next couple weeks. I'm off a couple weeks. Dylan's off at least a week. So it's just difficult for us to get a packet together. If we have a meeting, it'll be to address a couple specific things. The chair election would be one, and then the docketing might be another, but we'll see what happens.
Can I chime in? I would recommend canceling. I'm looking at January 3rd. It's the Monday after New Year's. I don't think that's a practical time to even think about a meeting.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, it's even a holiday for my office, which it's our celebration of New Year's Day is on the 3rd, or whatever it is.
Yeah, the city is observing the New Year's Day holiday on December 31st because by policy, it's the nearest weekday. And so since the 1st is a Saturday this year, or next year, whatever, however you want to phrase that, the nearest weekday would be Friday, December 31st. So the city is observing New Year's Day on December 31st, strangely. So Monday, January 3rd is a regular work day, which is bizarre, but here we are. But yes, like I said, I think the meeting is highly likely to be canceled. Like I said, there are a couple things I could bring, but especially with the holidays in there, it's probably not going to happen. As usual, the next December meeting, the December 20th meeting, is definitely canceled. The council will take action on that at their next meeting. So we don't plan on seeing all of you for a bit. And for upcoming items, it's the same ones you've seen. We'll have downtown Relook and the Rails project coming back, and then of course we'll start docketing in January.
Then the next meeting would be, and I got to put my calendar here, would be on a Tuesday, right? Because the next Monday would be MLK, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct. So Monday, the 17th of January would be MLK Day, so we push all the meetings back a day.
Tuesday.
So Tuesday the 18th, which I know will be confusing, but
okay.
Okay,
and then
anything else?
Just a few other general things. We kind of covered new commissioners a bit already, but as Commissioner Goodman pointed out, Commissioner Scheel did resign from the Planning Commission recently. His schedule was simply not allowing him to attend meetings, and he felt like he didn't want to stay on the commission, so he resigned. Commissioner Johnson, of course, will join the city council in January, so he'll go off and he's been replaced by a new appointee. So we will have a full planning commission going into 2022. The city council has not made any decisions yet on liaisons, committee appointments, things like that, and they won't be able to do that until January. So stay tuned on who the new council liaison will be. Certainly,
And we'll have a new council member who is unknown.
Yes, the position currently, Councilmember Ross's position will be filled by appointment. You heard that in the council liaison update. And then on the city staff side, you heard the update about the city administrator with Michael Sauerwein. Some additional news is that the finance director, Robert Hamoud, resigned effective the end of November. And so Drew Boutte is filling in as the interim finance director over there, effective on December 1st. I've also been appointed the interim community development director effective December 1st for
Congratulations.
What I'm doing. And we're hoping not have any more staff changes coming up. I'm looking at you, Dylan and Gwen.
So why did the finance director resign?
He received an offer he couldn't refuse to be the chief financial officer for the city of Issaquah.
Ah,
Fair.
Moving on to different pastures.
got it.
So we still remain hopeful to fill the Parks and Public Works Director position in the early part of the year, and then no word on filling any of the other vacant director positions beyond that. For now, we're doing our best. And then the only other thing I had, and Gwen already spoke to it, is you should have all received an email from the city clerk, Deb Estrada, about, let me bring it up so you can see it, about required Open Public Meetings Act training. This is something you can click on a YouTube link and watch the 16-minute, 24-second video, and then you can send an email to her to say you've done it. Certainly, you all need to do it. We encourage you to do it sooner than later as your schedule allows. And then we'll certainly look into additional opportunities like was mentioned with the city attorney about quasi-judicial procedures and things like that. So that's all I have.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to give a big long sob speech here or anything because I know it's getting late, but I did just want to just briefly say that it has been an honor serving the city and a privilege to serve the city in this capacity. And I look forward to my new role, and I firmly believe that the Planning Commission will be in good hands as we move forward. And there's a good chance that I will be back here in January, just serving a different role. But we'll see. All right, thank you all.
Thank you for your time and service and continued service.
Yeah,
Did a fantastic job as the chair, I think.
Great.
So.
You're gonna have to fight Commissioner Chris, or Council Member Christensen for it.
It's up to the Mayor Pro Tem, so we'll see what happens. Okay, so with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Thank you so much. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Have a good night.
Happy holidays.
Thanks
Happy
all.